Hello everyone, welcome to the Scumdogs Kennel. I'm your host, Chris Williams, and in today's Cryptid Corner mini-episode, today I have a couple of bizarre accounts. One involving an encounter with a shadow person, or a demon in a church, folks, as well as a story involving an alien orb and a giant golden-eyed being that could possibly have been maybe a cryptid or an alien entity. We'll start off with giant bright golden-eyed creature encountered in Talavera de la Reina, Toledo, Spain, and have a great time learning about this particularly bizarre story. Standing behind the tree was a gigantic figure, 3 to 4 meters tall, with eyes that shone bright golden yellow light. He stared in disbelief at the figure's eyes as it stared back at him. In Talavera de la Reina, Toledo, Spain, on August 21st, 2014, during the night, the main witness and his 2 friends had gone to perform some meditation exercises in a field near a local extension bridge. After some time of silent meditation, a luminous sphere, 1/3 the size of the moon, descended to hover over them. At first, the witness attempted to ignore the object, but was suddenly struck by a powerful electric current. A minute later, the large sphere vanished, but not before a smaller luminous sphere was seen to detach itself from the larger one. Curious, the 3 friends looked around and walked alongside a wall about 2.5 meters in length, which connected 2 posts. This went on along the field for about 1 kilometer. As they searched the area, they began to notice a very strong sulfuric odor around them, and the temperature seemed to rise also. The witness decided to run ahead of his 2 friends to reach the end of the wall. As he ran, he suddenly heard his friends yelling at him, "Stop! Stop! Please come back! Come back!" The witness then stopped and turned around, running back to his friends, who stood about 100 meters away. His 2 friends then told him that while he ran, they had seen on the other side of the wall a strange figure at least 3 to 4 meters in height, which seemed to slide at high speed right above the ground in his direction. As his friends began to scream, the figure seemed to hide behind a tree only about 5 meters away from the witness on the other side of the wall. At that very same moment, the witness turns around and sees standing behind the tree a gigantic figure 3 to 4 meters tall with eyes that shone a bright golden yellow light. He stared in disbelief at the figure's eyes as it stared back at him. At that moment, only he could think was that the creature was going to grab him and yell at his friends to run. All 3 took off running for their life. At least that was the feeling among the witnesses. As they ran, they looked behind them and could see the huge figure sliding on top of the wall, apparently following the men. They ran until the road ended, and then they ran across a wooded field near the bridge. Upon reaching the main road, the strange figure had thankfully disappeared. The next day, the witness returned to the scene and was stunned to see that the tree, which the creature had briefly hidden behind, was about 8 meters in height, and he was now convinced that the creature was almost as tall as the tree itself, making it much taller than 4 meters. He searched around and found an area of flattened and scorched grass. The odor was no longer present. According to his 2 friends, as they ran, their legs felt numb, as if being pricked by sharp needles, which impeded their progress. The witness did not feel this. All 3 men reported that as they entered the field, running away from the gigantic figure, they were enveloped in some sort of spiderweb, which covered their faces, making visibility almost impossible. They eventually freed themselves from the strange web-like substance and left the area. According to the witnesses, the trees in the area were mostly dried up with a little vegetation, and he has never seen spiders or webs in that area. Okay, what did the witnesses encounter, folks? It sounds like they encountered some sort of alien being who was out there to basically abduct them. Now, this account is very strange, folks, because this gigantic figure sounds almost like a Bigfoot with how big it was, folks. At least in some accounts that I've heard of over the years, that Bigfoot can basically be almost literally a giant at times, folks. And this account really reminds me of them. But do I think it was a Bigfoot? Not really. It sounds too different. So maybe it was some sort of other alien entity, or maybe it was some sort of cryptid that was drawn to this, alien sphere, or something else entirely. I do not know, folks, but I kind of think that there is a connection here, if only because I think that it was too convenient for 2 separate entities to be in the same area at once. But whatever it was, and whatever was actually happening that day, it really feels like it was an alien abduction attempt to me. Either way, let's read this next article, folks. It was standing in the confessional. Now, this story could possibly be either a shadow person account or maybe even a demonic encounter, as well as a ghost sighting here, folks, because it really feels like it could be either of the 3 things that happened. But the fact that this happened in a church is what is really telling here, folks. The fact that something like this could happen in a church is really frightening. But then again, maybe this particular church has a history of being haunted. So let's get into this report as well, folks, and read exactly what the witness saw. Let's read this brief blurb like in the last story, folks, before we get into the actual meat of it. I peeped in, and there it stood at that place where usually the confessor would be seated. It kind of looked up at me. It looked dark. It wore a suit or something. I turned and ran. Let's get into the actual, as I said, meat of the story, folks, because what we just read was certainly frightening. Hi, Lon. Long ago, it was in a small town in Germany where I lived with my granddad and grandmother. I don't think I was going to school at the time, but still old enough to remember. Must have been around 1973-74, I reckon. There were two, and the place still has them, churches, both Roman Catholic. The one on the main road used to be unlocked during the daytime. My nan went in, no other people in at that time, to say a prayer or to light a candle or both. I asked whether I could have a wander around to look at the wall paintings and figures of saints in detail that were everywhere. As long as I wouldn't run or make noise, she said I could look around. So I did for maybe 5 to 10 minutes. Now, this sounds all very ordinary, doesn't it, folks? But I can kind of feel like this place has already a creepy vibe from the, description the guy says of it, folks. Especially with the wall paintings and the figures of saints, folks. It really gives me this creepy vibe. Now, I mentioned earlier that I think that this guy was an adult because he said he was out of school, but he might have been basically out of school because it was summer or something. Either way, folks, certainly it was very creepy what he describes here. And the fact that it happened in summer, in broad daylight, it makes it even creepier, folks, because that means that these encounters can happen at any time, anywhere, even in churches. Either way, let's get back to the article. My nan was now chatting to a lady in a corner close to the altar. I was down the other end. On one side were all the confessionals, all empty, of course, at the time or so. I thought, being a noisy little devil, I had to peep through one of the windows of each one. Maybe 3 or 5 of these were there, just before the last one. I peeped in, and there it stood at the place where usually the confessor would be seated. It kind of looked up at me. It looked dark. It wore a suit or something. I turned and ran. I was scolded for running. I was really scared. I told Nan to look into each confessional on the way out. She did. She told me to look, too, to make me see there is nothing unusual. I looked. The one was empty, but I could see the empty little bench in there, but it stood. It never sat or anything. Clearly, I could see the gray velvet seat cushion, and on the cushion was a small book, like a prayer book. No book in the other alcoves. Of course, I didn't sleep for the entire week as we lived next to the other Roman Catholic church. Still puzzled to this day. I know I have seen something R. And I have to say, his story is rather frightening, folks, but like the other story, was it actually an encounter with a demonic being or an alien? Because this figure was, well, as I basically think, folks, was a shadow person, because it sounds very reminiscent of it. Though I have to say, folks, that he says that it looked like it was physically there, like he had and was wearing a suit. So it makes me think that maybe whatever this thing was basically not just an image on a wall, like just a plain shadow, but actually a 3-dimensional figure that looked up at this man, or boy at the time, and frightened him. Now, what do you make of it, folks, with these encounters? Were they actually encounters with alien beings or something else entirely? Were they demonic? Not so much in the first account, folks, because I really think that what happened in the first account might be that these people saw this glowing sphere and it somehow did something to these 3 men, maybe elevated their consciousness or something, and it's allowed them to see this gigantic 4-meter tall being. Or, as the witness confessed when he went back and saw how big the tree was that was near this being, that was even bigger than 4 meters, that whatever these things are, it might be that they're some sort of supernatural entities. They could possibly be aliens or something else altogether. I don't know, folks. All I know is that these people, I do believe that they saw something. But what about you, folks? I would love to hear your, comments down below and tell me what you believe about them. Or do you think that these were actually alien entities that were going to abduct these men? Because, it really does sound like that, especially after seeing this sphere, folks. Do you think it was actually some UFO, maybe a drone or something, and picked these 3 men for abduction? Because it sounds like it could possibly be the truth. As well, with the story with the, shadow person, folks, it was seen basically in this confessional. So do you think something went on there that allowed this figure to manifest? Or do you think it was an alien? As well as the case with the, men seeing this gigantic being, do you think it's all aliens or something else entirely? I want to hear from you, folks. Either way, we're at the end, folks, so please go subscribe to my YouTube channel. Read comics, they're bad for you, okay? You can use the YouTube link down below in the descriptions or the chat to go subscribe to me. Until next time, folks, I'm Chris Williams from the Scumdogs Kennel. Thank you all for joining me. I'll see you all again tomorrow.